always thought my daughter loved me. Every morning she would smile, ask how I slept, and help with small things around the house. I never imagined that behind those smiles, she could be planning to destroy my life. It all started with small things. A missing check here, a forgotten appointment there. At first I brushed it off, thinking it was just teenage carelessness. But then, the unease grew, like a shadow I couldn't shake. I didn't know it yet, but the trust I had in her was about to be shattered. And what I discovered next? You won't believe. Stay with me. The truth is more shocking than I ever imagined. My daughter Emily had always been my pride. At 16, she was charming, polite, and seemed genuinely caring. Friends admired her, neighbors complimented her manners, and I believed I had raised a good, honest child. We had our routines, breakfast together, weekend errands, late-night chats about school and friends. But beneath that surface, something was off. Small things began slipping through the cracks. Bills were mysteriously late. Important documents went missing from my desk. And sometimes I would catch her sneaking glances at my phone, quickly hiding whatever she was reading. I tried to ignore it. Maybe it was just a phase. Maybe I was overthinking. But every instinct in me screamed that something wasn't right. I started paying closer attention, watching her movements, noting patterns. The unease settled deeper into my chest, a weight I couldn't shake. One afternoon, I found a crumpled receipt tucked into her notebook. It wasn't just any receipt. It was for something I never bought, for a sum of money that should have been in my account. My heart raced, and a cold realization hit me. This wasn't carelessness. This was deliberate, and I had no idea just how far her plans went. After discovering that receipt, I couldn't ignore the signs any longer. Every interaction with Emily felt like a carefully staged performance. The sweet smiles, the casual questions, the fake interest in my day, they were all part of something bigger, something hidden from me. I started checking more closely. Bank statements didn't add up. Small payments had vanished. Deposits I remembered making were gone. And the more I looked, the more I realized she had been manipulating my finances for months. My own daughter was siphoning money from me, all while pretending nothing was wrong. One night, I decided to follow her discreetly after dinner. She slipped out the door, hood pulled low, and I kept my distance. I watched as she met a friend at a cafe, passed them an envelope, and returned home with a calm expression, like she hadn't done anything. My stomach turned. The betrayal wasn't accidental. It was calculated. When I confronted her the next day, she laughed it off, said I was imagining things, and made excuses I could barely follow. But I had proof now. The envelope, the missing money, the inconsistencies. I knew I had to dig deeper. I began searching her room carefully, and that's when I found it. A small, hidden journal tucked behind her textbooks. The pages were filled with notes, plans, and records of every action she had taken to undermine me. Each line stabbed at me, a reminder that the person I trusted most was the one trying to ruin me. I realized then that this wasn't just teenage rebellion. This was betrayal in its purest form. And for the first time, I felt the surge of something I hadn't expected, the determination to take back what was mine, and to make sure she couldn't hurt me again. The day I decided to confront Emily, I felt a mix of dread and resolve. I sat at the kitchen table, her journal open before me, each page a roadmap of lies and betrayal. She walked in, smiling as usual, unaware of the storm waiting for her. "Emily, we need to talk," I said calmly, trying to steady my voice. She froze for a second, then forced a casual shrug, pretending she didn't sense anything serious. But her eyes betrayed her. I saw the flicker of guilt, or maybe fear. I laid the journal on the table and flipped it open. "I found this," I said. "All the money that's gone. The things you've done. I know." Her face went pale, and for a moment she was silent. Then she laughed nervously, trying to brush it off. "It's not what you think," she said. "I was just borrowing it. I plan to pay it back." I shook my head, disbelief and anger rising. "Borrowing? For months? You've lied to me, manipulated me, and treated every ounce of trust I gave you like it meant nothing. Do you understand what this is?" I could feel my chest tighten, the betrayal weighing like a physical force. She stammered, unable to meet my eyes. I didn't mean to hurt you," she whispered. But the journal told a different story. Every detail she had recorded, dates, amounts, who she gave money to, showed premeditation. This was no mistake. This was calculated sabotage. I realized then that words alone wouldn't make her understand the gravity of what she'd done. I needed evidence. I pulled out my phone and showed her screenshots of bank transfers, messages she had deleted, and photos I had taken of the envelope exchanges. Each piece was undeniable. She looked cornered, her bravado crumbling like fragile glass. "You think you can just get away with this?" I asked quietly, almost whispering, letting the tension hang in the air. "Do you understand what happens when someone betrays me like this?" She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. For the first time, the girl who had seemed so untouchable, so clever, looked small and vulnerable. I paused, letting the silence stretch, feeling a shift within myself. The hurt was still there, but it was starting to mix with something sharper. Determination. I wasn't going to let this go. Not because I wanted revenge for revenge's sake, but because I had to protect myself and teach her the consequences of betrayal. Over the next few hours, I calmly laid out everything I had uncovered. I explained how every action she took, every secret plan, had been documented and verified. The more she tried to argue or deflect, the more evidence I presented. By the end, she was sobbing quietly, finally facing the truth she had worked so hard to hide. But I didn't just want tears. I wanted accountability. I reminded her that trust isn't rebuilt overnight and that actions have consequences. I made it clear that this wasn't about punishment in anger, but about ensuring she understood the weight of what she had done. As the day turned to evening, I felt a strange mixture of relief and exhaustion. The confrontation had drained me, but it also gave me a sense of control I hadn't felt since discovering the journal. I realized that betrayal doesn't have to destroy you if you face it head-on, and sometimes those you love the most are capable of the deepest deception. Later that night, I reflected on everything that had happened. I thought about the way she smiled, the way I had trusted her implicitly, and the shocking realization that love alone doesn't prevent betrayal. But I also thought about resilience, the ability to take back what's yours, to protect yourself, and to rise stronger from the wounds inflicted by someone close. I didn't know what the future held for our relationship. Part of me feared that trust would never fully return. But another part of me knew that facing this head-on, demanding accountability, and standing firm in the truth was the first step toward restoring balance. Emily had learned, painfully and irrevocably, that actions carry consequences, and I had regained a sense of empowerment I didn't know I was missing. And as I closed the journal and locked it away, I understood something important. Betrayal can wound deeply, but it also reveals strength you never knew you had. I was no longer just a parent betrayed. I was someone who refused to be broken, someone ready to take control of the situation and turn it into a lesson that would last a lifetime. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but one thing was certain. I wasn't done. Emily needed to understand the full scope of her actions, and I had the tools, the evidence, and the resolve to make sure she did. This confrontation was only the beginning, the first act in a larger reckoning that would restore justice to my life and ensure that trust, once broken, would never be taken lightly again. The morning after our confrontation, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. The betrayal had been exposed, and now it was time to reclaim control. Emily had to understand that deception has consequences, and that sometimes the person you think is powerless holds all the cards. I started quietly gathering everything I could use to secure my position. Bank statements, emails, text messages, and the journal she had so carefully hidden. All of it formed a web of undeniable proof. I didn't want to shame her publicly, but I needed to make sure the lesson sank in. This was about justice, not revenge for revenge's sake. Over the next few days, I observed her closely. She acted as if nothing had changed, slipping back into her routines, pretending to be the daughter I once trusted. But I could see the tension in her eyes, the small hesitations in her movements. She knew I held the truth, and that alone shifted the power. One afternoon, I called her into the study. I had set up everything carefully, documents organized, evidence laid out. "Emily," I said, "you need to understand what you've done and the steps we're taking to fix it." She looked wary, but there was no defiance left, only the faintest shadow of fear. I began going through the journal, page by page, letting her see how meticulously she had planned each move. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't yell or accuse. I simply presented the facts. With each page, I saw her shoulders slump further, her confidence eroding. She realized that her actions, her careful manipulations, had left her exposed. Then came the leverage. I showed her the accounts she had been accessing, the messages she had sent, and the paper trail of her deceit. "Everything is documented," I told her calmly. "There's no way to deny it, and there's no way to hide it anymore." She nodded silently, finally understanding the magnitude of what she had done. I set clear boundaries. She would make amends, restore what she had taken, and participate in repairing the trust she had broken. This wasn't punishment for punishment's sake. It was about accountability. Every action has consequences, and it was time for her to face them. But I didn't stop there. I wanted her to understand the ripple effect of betrayal. I arranged for her to write letters, not apologies filled with empty words, but letters acknowledging each misdeed, explaining what she had done, and reflecting on why it was wrong. It was difficult for her, uncomfortable, and humbling. But I knew that true learning often comes from discomfort, not from fear or shame alone. As the days went on, I noticed subtle changes. She became more cautious, more reflective. She stopped pretending to be someone she wasn't. Slowly, the pretenses she had built around herself began to crumble, replaced with honesty, however reluctant at first. And with each step she took toward genuine accountability, I felt a sense of relief and control returning to my life. I also took steps to protect myself moving forward. Stronger financial safeguards, tighter oversight of important documents, and clear communication about boundaries. I wasn't just protecting myself from her. I was ensuring that no one, in the future, could take advantage of my trust. Betrayal had taught me a harsh lesson, but it had also armed me with wisdom and resilience. By the end of the week, Emily and I had a conversation that felt like the first true dialogue we had shared in months. No pretense, no manipulation, just honesty. She admitted her mistakes openly, and I allowed her to see the consequences fully. It was a turning point, a moment where power shifted back to its rightful balance, not through intimidation, but through awareness and accountability. That night, I reflected on the events with a calm intensity. Betrayal is devastating, especially when it comes from someone you love. But I realized something profound. Exposing deception, facing it directly, and reclaiming your own power doesn't make you cruel, it makes you strong. And for Emily, the lesson was now unforgettable. I knew there would still be challenges ahead. Healing from betrayal takes time, and trust is fragile. But by confronting the problem head-on, setting clear consequences, and demanding accountability, I had transformed what could have been a lifelong wound into a teaching moment, both for her and for myself. And as I prepared for the next day, I felt something I hadn't felt since discovering the journal. A sense of control, a sense of readiness, and a sense that the scales of justice had finally begun to tip back in my favor. Emily had learned, painfully and undeniably, that betrayal carries weight, and I had reclaimed the power I thought was lost. Weeks had passed since the confrontation, and the air in our home felt different. Tense, cautious, but undeniably honest. Emily no longer hid behind smiles or excuses. The weight of her actions had settled heavily on her shoulders, and I could see the change, subtle but real. I knew the lesson was working because she stopped trying to manipulate situations to her advantage. Small acts of honesty started to appear: a corrected payment, a truthful explanation about a misstep, a willingness to share information without being asked. Each moment reminded me that accountability is powerful, especially when someone has tasted the consequences of betrayal firsthand. But the real work wasn't just in observing change. It was in enforcing it. I required her to meet with a financial counselor, someone neutral who could guide her in understanding the seriousness of what she'd done. She balked at first, frustrated and embarrassed. But once she faced the facts, admitted her mistakes, and committed to learning from them, I could feel the tension in our relationship slowly easing. At home, we re-established boundaries. Emily understood that certain actions were non-negotiable. Trust, respect, and honesty were now written rules, not just implied expectations. The journal that had caused so much pain remained locked, a reminder that secrecy and manipulation are dangerous weapons in the hands of someone you love. One evening I reflected on everything that had happened. I realized that betrayal doesn't just wound the person deceived, it shapes the deceiver as well. Emily, forced to confront her actions, was learning the hard truths about accountability, trust, and consequences. And I, the one betrayed, was learning about resilience, the necessity of clear boundaries, and the importance of reclaiming personal power when it's threatened. I wanted her to truly understand that betrayal has consequences that can't be undone by mere apologies. Actions must be corrected, trust rebuilt through effort, and lessons internalized. I watched her make those steps, faltering at times, but moving forward nonetheless. The satisfaction wasn't in punishment. It was in seeing the truth become unavoidable. As the weeks turned into months, a cautious respect replaced the tension. Emily and I weren't the same as before, but we were moving toward a more honest dynamic. She had learned, painfully and irrevocably, that deception carries a price. I had learned that facing betrayal directly, with calm determination and clear evidence, restores not just justice but personal strength. And yet, even as I regained control, I knew this was only part of the story. Life is unpredictable, and betrayal can come from unexpected places. I had learned to trust again, carefully, with eyes wide open. And I had learned that protecting oneself doesn't mean closing off. It means being prepared, vigilant, and ready to act when necessary. I looked at Emily one evening, sitting quietly at the table, working on her homework. She avoided my gaze at first, but then met my eyes and nodded, a silent acknowledgement that she understood. That simple gesture carried more weight than words ever could. It told me she had internalized the lesson, and that our family could, with effort, rebuild. This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about accountability, resilience, and the power of facing the truth. If you've ever been deceived by someone close, remember that confronting the problem, gathering evidence, and standing firm doesn't make you cruel. It makes you strong. If you want to see another story where someone thought they were untouchable, only to be exposed by secrets they hid too well, check out our next video. Trust me, you won't believe the lengths some people will go to. and the lessons that follow when their plans unravel. Betrayal leaves scars, but it also teaches, and the strongest lessons often come from the ones we love the most.